most important thing for you to know today, firstly, is the LA pop-up event is here. I'm so excited. The tickets are currently live for this one day and one time only event. Friends, the website page says it all. Any questions about it, you know where to find me. All right. So today we are talking about how to be empoweredly submissive. And you're probably hoping for like some long spiel on like the step-by-step process to be submissive, but I'm actually going to tell you what's really going to work because like I've said before, and I'm going to say it again, if you are trying to be the sub in your relationship or to be the feminine one or to let go of control or to surrender more, whatever it is that you're wanting to do in your life, we are really just essentially wanting to embody more of that femininity. If you're doing it with a rocky, shitty foundation, it's not going to stick. Think about it like this. I've been in my little gardening era, which I've very much been loving. And so if you are planting a beautiful, let's say, echinacea plant, I bought some, so we're going to have a little echinacea vibe going on in the backyard. My goal is to make our garden like a rainbow has vomited on our house, like our area, our land, and for the vast majority of the garden to be edible. But if not edible, it's just beautiful to look at. You know, like, okay, you can't eat daisies, but daisies are so pretty. Or you can't eat hydrangeas, but they're pretty. So that's what we're going for. Anyway, so think about it in terms of like if I buy this beautiful echinacea plant and if I plant it in the ground and the soil is really bad, the echinacea plant is going to be there. It'll survive for a few days, but it's going to die, right? Versus if I plant, you know, the echinacea or the basil or whatever it is in really beautiful nutrient dense soil, it's going to flourish, right? And I'm not going to have to do too much for it to flourish. I'm just going to have to make sure that it gets water and then basically that's it, right? And that no animals come and like eat it all up. Like the deer sometimes come and like eat the plants. So we have to have certain plants out the front of the house and then some plants in the back where there's a fence around it. So think about it in terms of the same, think about you and you being able to embrace your femininity in the same kind of way. And for any men listening that are wanting to help her to get more into her submissiveness so that you can really be the masculine, it kind of goes the same way. So you're just going to have to like change some of my words, but you'll get a lot out of this episode as well. So the crux of this is if you want to be submissive and if you want to feel empowered in your submissiveness, the undercurrent of true empowered submissive behavior is confidence. And this confidence lies in the ability to say no. That's the key thing. So, in order for you to even be submissive or feminine or magnetic or whatever, it's not about doing a pile of things. It's actually about, firstly, clearing away all the things that are making you feel unsafe for that to be your natural state in your body. And then once you've cleared those things that are making your body feel like that can't be its natural state, then you can bring in the action pieces of it, right? Like the naked dancing or the breast massage or whatever it is, like you can bring those things in and they will stick and they'll be sustainable and you'll do them regularly. You'll integrate them into your life because they're not forced. You're not trying to do them. You're not trying to get into your feminine or you're not trying to be submissive. You just are. That's now your natural state of relaxation. So now when you soften into your femininity, right? Rather than you not being able to soften because there's this masculine protective wall that inhibits you from fully letting go. Because if you were to let go of control, you could be in great danger or somebody could abuse you or hurt you or take advantage of you, etc. So in order for you to actually be in your feminine or in order for her to be in her feminine, if you're a man listening to this, she or you is going to get confusing. I'm just going to keep it as ladies, right? So you have to be so confident in being able to say no. But when you have fears of rejection, abandonment wounds, people pleasing tendencies, a fawn response. So a fawn response is like people pleasing response. It's like Stockholm syndrome, right? It's like basically your response. And this is learned as a child. Did you guys hear that thunder? Holy fuck. You know when you hear thunder so loud that it actually feels like the sky is breaking? That happened yesterday as well. And I jumped out of my desk chair. I'm not joking. I literally jumped. It was ridiculous. Anyway, so the fawn response is when you've grown up in a situation as a child where you feel like you don't know how people are going to react. What you do as a trauma response to try and give yourself the illusion of safety is, okay, what can I do to make sure that I don't disrupt anybody, that I don't rock the boat, that no one's angry at me. I want to keep everybody happy, right? So if someone says, go and do this thing, even if you're like, no, you're like, yes, okay. And you say yes, you're in this fawn response because you're trying to keep mum or dad emotionally regulated, essentially, so that they don't go off the walls and then you feel unsafe. So if you have a fawn response, it becomes very hard to be in your feminine. If you're in a constant fight or flight response, if even if you are in the opposite, if you're in a freeze response, if you are completely numbed out and disassociated, you can't drop in. You're not really aware of doing anything because your body is just so tapped out and disconnected, right? If you have this constant wanting to be accepted or this constant need for validation, if you have fear that you're going to be told that you're crazy, I mean, the list could go on. And when you have any or all of these things lodged in your body, right? This is an unconscious or a subconscious way that you are showing up, thing that you're acting from. It's a fear that you have. When you have all of these things, your body's going to be like, hell no to you being submissive to him, or to you being in your feminine, or to you relaxing and releasing control. It doesn't matter if you want to. If you feel like you physically cannot, if it feels like it's dangerous, and even if you logically are like, but Monica, I know it's not dangerous, but I just can't let go. That's the key thing. Because trauma isn't about what you know, it's not about your head, right? Trauma is about your body. It's about the energy and the emotion that is stuck and lodged in your body because of these past situations where you haven't been able to process what's happened in the moment. You've gone straight into a trauma response of fight or flight or freeze or fawn or disassociate or whatever it is. You've gone into this trauma response, keeping all of that energy and that emotion and that fear and that betrayal and whatever else lodged in there. And it's still in there. 20 years later, it's still in there unless you've actually addressed it, which is why you can consciously know all the fucking feminine things to do, but knowing it versus embodying it are two different things. Let me say that again. Knowing something versus embodying something is two very different things. And we so often, on TV and everything, only see the empowered woman, right? She's the cool one, right? She's the one that we idolize. She's not submissive to her man. She either doesn't have one, or she walks all over him, or they don't really show the relationship enough to get like a grasp of like what would their relationship actually be in real life. Maybe they just come across as a power couple. So you're like, oh, I want to be a power couple. So I'm just going to be like her. I'm going to be this girl boss, this cool girl, whatever it is. TV doesn't give us good programming, right? Generally speaking, for most shows, if there is some like submissive woman, it's submissive that is positioned to us in a really negative way. It's submissive that's pushed to us not from a conscious choice to be submissive, but it's like, oh, she's a doormat. So let's just break this down. When I'm talking about this phrase that I've made up of empoweredly submissive, I know empoweredly is not a word, which is why I'm saying this is a phrase I've made up. When I'm talking about being empoweredly submissive, what I'm saying in this is that submissive isn't actually inherently negative. The word submissive has gotten a negative connotation over the years because now people think that if you're a submissive woman, you're a doormat, you're letting him walk all over you, you don't have any power, you don't have any confidence, you don't have any control, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no. You could be really submissive in a very unempowered way, or you could be really submissive in an empowered way. There's so many different expressions of yourself or ways that you can live, which is a neutral, and you get to decide whether it's positive or negative, right? You could live in a very wealthy way. Now, for some people, that could be like, oh, that's so negative. That's like whatever they're going to say. For other people, that could actually be a really positive thing. It completely depends on the way that you're choosing to live from that word. Majority of things we choose whether it's positive or negative. Let's take anger for an example. Majority of people have a negative connotation about anger. Anger isn't actually inherently bad, right? The emotion anger is not bad, but we've made it bad because of what we associate with anger. Just like we've made submission bad with what we generally speaking associate with submission. But when you are choosing to be empoweredly submissive, what I'm saying in this is that you are actually empowered in your submission, right? You have chosen that. You feel like such a sexy, fucking amazing woman because you don't have to make the fucking decision, right? You actually feel so confident and so magnetic and so turned on and so empowered by being submissive. It doesn't feel like think about it like this, but what can be empowering for one woman can be very disempowering for another woman, right? It could be oppressing for another woman. And for a lot of you, maybe you're coming to this realization that it doesn't feel fucking empowering anymore to choose the date. It doesn't feel empowering anymore to be the one to plan the whole holiday. What actually feels empowering now is being like, I trust you to do it. That could be what's empowering now. And of course, oh, hi, Phoebe girl. And of course, for some other people, depending where they're on in their journey, that could not be empowering for them. So when it comes to you choosing to be submissive, if you are choosing to be submissive with an undercurrent of extreme confidence, right? And it does not need to be this outward, extroverted, kind of really obvious confidence. There can be quiet confidence. Just because your confidence is really obvious doesn't mean it's actually confident. Doesn't mean you're actually confident. There's plenty of people, I used to be one of them, where confidence is fake, right? They have this facade of confidence, but it's very shallow self-confidence. It's shallow because they're actually doing it as a way to try and protect themselves. They're actually doing it to try and feel better about themselves, but deep down, they're questioning themselves, or they're hating themselves, or they're shaming themselves. This used to be me. I outwardly was very confident at school, but I wasn't inwardly very confident, right? I would be questioning myself. I'd be judging myself. I'd be shaming myself. Now is depending on the situation, depending if I know the people really well or not, I can be less outwardly confident. I can actually be a lot more quiet, but I am very, very deeply self-confident. Now, if I'm hanging out with my best friends, I am very outwardly confident, but it also now comes with deep self-confidence. I'm not doing it to try and get external approval or validation or to be seen or to be loved or to be enough. So the confidence that's really imperative for that empowered submission is a deep sense of self-confidence. And then the other piece, which I kind of said at the beginning of the episode, is boundaries. Now, a lot of people don't know how to do boundaries. They may know some of their boundaries, but they don't actually know how to express their boundaries in a given moment, right? Because you being able to say to me, oh, Monica, this is one of my boundaries, that's great. But that's completely different to in the moment where the boundary has been walked over or stepped over or crossed. In the moment, you don't actually say the boundary or embody the boundary. You don't actually act the boundary out. They are two completely different kettle of fish. Kettle of fish? That's the right phrase, right? Whatever. It's two completely different kettle of fish. If that's not the phrase, then we're just rolling with it. So for a lot of people, they actually don't feel safe to let go, whether it's to let go in business, whether it's to let go in their relationship, whether it's to let go in their mind, to let go to the universe. There is an inability to soften and to trust the process because inherently they have this fear of, do I have myself? Can I say no? Can I stand up? Do I know when the limit is of softening and surrendering? So if we were to use your business for an example, if your business was, flailing about and everything was falling to shit, if you are in a state of, if you've been in a state of surrender for a long time, being empoweredly submissive in your business, for example, would show as you could ultimately get to a point where you would decide, no, I'm doing something about this. You wouldn't just be like, oh, let's just watch it fucking sink. You would know within yourself that you have a limit, you have a line. It's the same in a relationship. It's not that you have a limit and a line where you now take control in terms of like, oh, you already have this idea in your mind, but it's about the ability to, in a moment, not even pre-planned, it's in a spontaneous moment. You are so deeply in tune with your body, your needs, your wants, your desires, your limits, your boundaries, everything, your standards, that in any given moment, whether you know the moment is about to happen or not, right? Whether you preempted it, whether you know what you're doing tomorrow night, in any given moment, you have the nervous system regulation, the emotional regulation, and the ability to actually really live out your boundaries to say no. So it could be, for example, that let's say you're having really amazing, like BDSM, sub-dom kind of sex. And for anyone that doesn't know, BDSM or that kinky kind of, let's just say kinky sex, you're having kinky sex. It doesn't mean that you need to be having like, leather straps and chains and whips. Whatever is kinky to you is what we're going with, right? So what could be kinky to me could be completely different to what is kinky for you, but I want you to keep that in mind. So let's say you're having amazing kinky sex, or you're starting to, right? The foreplay's happening with your partner. And all of a sudden you're like, no, you just don't want to, whether it's you don't feel safe, whether it's you don't want to, whether it's like you're in your head, whether you have to pee, whether you, have a fucking leg cramp. It doesn't matter what it is, but there's some kind of no going on. And a woman that is truly embodied in this idea of being empoweredly submissive would be able to say no. And not from this panicked place, but actually from this really calm, grounded, and powerful place. Whether it's because she has to pee, whether she's in pain, whether she has a leg cramp, whether she doesn't feel like it really doesn't matter. And for a lot of women, they actually don't feel like they could do that. They don't have this ability, they don't have this deep self-trust of, I've got myself and I could do that. They want to be able to. That's the key thing. Like, you want to be able to, but if you don't actually feel like in a moment, whether it's sex or on the street or in a work meeting or anything, or whether you're cooking dinner and your partner says something mean to you, if you don't feel like you can stand up for yourself and say no and kind of actually step into the driver's seat for a second, you aren't going to feel safe to be fully submissive. Right? The ability to be fully submissive it's coupled with the ability to know when you need to stand up for yourself and that you can. Right? So the difference between being submissive from not an empowered place, right? You're being a doormat, you're letting him walk all over you, would be that he could do something really mean or upsetting and you would just shrivel up, maybe be tense, maybe go into some kind of trauma response. And ultimately you wouldn't really say anything. It would build up resentment. You would want to be able to say something, or you wouldn't even know what's happening because you would go into a complete freeze and you wouldn't even be able to process. But the bottom line is that you don't really stand up for yourself, whether it's because you don't know how, or whether it's because you're afraid to, or whether it's because of any of the reasons that I kind of gave at the beginning in regards to past trauma inhibiting you from, being able to actually hold yourself and stand up for yourself. The most important thing to understand is that in order to be submissive, it has to come with safety, and safety from yourself. Yes, also from your partner, in that he allows you to feel safe to say no. He doesn't then shame you for doing that. It's really important, right? A man has to be able, like a man that is a safe, masculine provider for her, that kind of man will welcome a no, right? And not a no from this like reactive bitchy place, but a no of, no, I don't want that. We are attracted to people that have self-respect. Bottom line. He's attracted to her because she can say no. She's attracted to him because he can say no. Think of it like this, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to talk to the guys for a second. If you as a man want to be with a woman that is her, right? She is her. Like we get the vibe when I'm saying her. If you want that to be your woman, then you need to be him, right? And part of being him would be welcoming her pushback. Not all the time, but if she wasn't agreeing with you, or if she didn't feel fully 100% yes with something, you want her to feel the safety in the relationship to say no, because if she doesn't feel that over time, it's going to lead to resentment, a lack of trust, a lack of vulnerability, a lack of openness. Do not mind me, I'm quickly interrupting the episode for a very, very important reason, because you do not want to miss out on this. If you are ready for more, if you are ready to turn your life on, to be in pleasure, to discover your own pleasure, to feel like life is one big giant session of foreplay, and to upgrade your wealth frequency, your magnetism, and really feel safe to step into your feminine energy, then you need to join the current round of Queen Alchemy. I'm so excited that we are back with it. This is my renowned program. I've been doing it for, God, I don't even know how many years anymore. Well, a lot. I've been doing it since 2019, right? So however many years that makes it. And this program is unlike anything else out there. So we start the program off by really doing deep healing work, trauma release, somatic release. We heal so many of those wounds that you don't even know exist, right? It is profound, the results that women get from just the first week, from the first call. It's really quite amazing. So the program is a beautiful combination of timeless pre-recorded content that you get immediately. So as soon as you join, you will then get access to the portal, which you can start doing before we start the live calls, which I always suggest to do because then you're just a little bit ahead, right? Then you will also have with me 7 2-hour, sometimes they're like 2.5 to 3, 2-hour live healing calls, and an additional 14 what I call mini trauma calls. And these mini trauma calls, you can pick and choose the ones that you come to based on the kind of trauma and work that you want to be healing. Plus, there is also a Telegram group for extra support over that 7-week period, and there is hours, about 10 to 15 hours of extra Q&A time that happens in that Telegram group where you send me messages. So you send me like questions, and I will often reply with a long voice message that is customized to exactly the question that you're asking. It is the most intimate and revolutionary program that I run, and frankly, that I have seen done. It has changed thousands of women's lives. I mean, if you go to my Instagram highlights, I can't even count how many highlights there are now for Queen Alchemy. There is so many highlights, and they are chock a block full of screenshots of testimonials. If you go on the website page, there is so many testimonials there that you actually have to click to go to another website page to see the rest of them, because it would slow down the website page so much if they were all on that Queen Alchemy website page. And there are all the screenshots, and then there are also a bunch of beautifully written testimonials from previous Queen Alchemy girls. I mean, this program, it sells itself, right? It speaks for itself. I've talked about it for years. You know whether you want to do this or not. If you are finding that you are in these shitty habits, these bad toxic cycles, you're in bad relationship after bad relationship, you know that you have a pile of wounding and trauma work that you need to be working on. You know that you are, feeling and receiving love in the wrong kind of ways, right? Because that's how your dad gave you love, and you are sick of experiencing that. You are going to be getting irreversible results, as in they are sustainable. So not irreversible in a bad way. They are sustainable results. They are not something that you have to sustain yourself by doing like 1,000 journaling prompts a year. This is something that, because it is based in somatic work, right? Somatic healing, somatic embodiment, this sticks. Right? We are completely recoding your body in a way where you don't have to think about acting like this new version of yourself. You don't have to think about, oh, I got to embody my inner queen. You just are her, right? It is priceless, this program. The results are absolutely irresistible. And I know so many of you really crave the sisterhood and the depth. And this program is going to give that to you. It is nourishing to our bodies to be in this beautiful container where we are held so deeply by other women. We are seen so deeply by other women. And frankly, I think that Queen Alchemy, and many past Queen Alchemy clients will attest to this as well, it is essential for every woman to do this very unconventional and revolutionary program. So if you would like to read more about it, if you would like to secure your space, just look at the link below in this episode, and you can secure your spot. And of course, if you are wanting to really talk to me, you're unsure about it, you have two options. You can, one, book in a 20-minute consultation call with me and we'll chat. The other option is that you can send a DM on Instagram and just let Olivia know that you would love a little voice message from me on some input, just to hear my voice and know that I've kind of been filled in on your situation. And I will, of course, shoot you a voice message as soon as I can. So you have those options as well to help you feel really secure and safe in this investment. All right, I will see you in the program. Let's get back to the episode. So with the collection of past trauma, past fears, past wounds being created, inability to feel safe, right? Saying no. So therefore you can't draw your boundaries. With all of that collectively combined, it becomes very, very hard to soften and receive from your man. And this is why I'm so passionate. And I know I say it a lot, but it's because it's really true. If you have found that you've like read all the books, you've taken the courses, like you've tried to do whatever you've tried to do, but you just feel like you can't let go of control, or you can't soften, or you can't let go of this fear, or you're constantly attracting in the wrong guys, or whatever it is, right? But you basically just find that like no matter what you do, you're in the same fucking situation month after month, year after year. The mindset is not enough, because you cannot think your way out of trauma. When you heal your trauma, when you heal the root of everything, it affects every area of your life more than you know. And I'm going to kind of actually walk through some examples of like when boundaries and trauma and a lack of self-confidence and a lack of self-trust, when they're all present, or I should say lack of boundaries, when they're all present, it can cause it to show up in a couple different ways, like the lack of trust, guilt, shame, fear of rejection, disassociation, repetition of the traumatic patterns, repetition of bad habits, confusion around being a bitch versus drawing boundaries. It can show up in a multitude of different ways, and it can make your fucking head spin, because you think, right, key thing, we're thinking right now, you think you're doing all the right things. But when you are in your body, which only is really able to be felt when your body's open and clear of past shit, when you're really in your body, you know what alignment feels like. You know what groundedness feels like. You know what regulation feels like, an emotional regulation. You know what being in a response versus react feels like. And when you find yourself stuck in this cycle all the time, it's not a reason for you to be like, oh my God, it's you, like it's me, I'm broken, this can't be fixed, nothing's ever gonna work, I gotta just throw in the towel, like this is who I just have to accept that I am. No, you know deep down that you can be a better version of yourself, that you can have more in your life, that things can be healthier, that you can have a healthy life in every sense of the word. And it's a reason for you to work with me. If you are going around in these cycles all the time, you're not saving yourself any time. You are wasting time trying to do probably the cheaper options or the options that are quote unquote less time consuming. But my question for you is, how is it year after year, month after month, round after round of Queen Alchemy or one-on-one or whatever the program is that people get incredible results in the shortest amount of time? I've actually just even been going through a bunch of the Queen Alchemy testimonials. And, in 7 weeks, we had this is from one person, by the way. I was reading a testimonial just before. In 7 weeks, she bought a house, got a job promotion, fell pregnant, got rid of her PMS, healed her relationship with her, I think it was husband or his fiance or something. And it's the best that their relationship has ever been. That is 5 huge fucking wins. And with all of that, it's less bad self-talk or no bad self-talk. I don't want to say the exact thing because I can't remember all this off the top of my head. But like when you see these testimonials from people where they've pointed out, I've got this, all from Queen Alchemy, you also have to remember that behind all of those things is so much inner peace, so much freedom, the ability to say no, the ability to draw boundaries. Like there is so much that is worked on behind to be able to show these incredible things. It's not just these quick wins. It's these deep, grounded, long, sustainable wins. So let's go through some of these things of like, here's what to know about boundaries and trauma, and thus whether you actually can be empoweredly submissive in your current state. When there is trauma, there can often then be a loss of trust, right? Past negative situations, past pain, past abandonment, past betrayal can shatter an individual's trust in themselves and therefore in others. The loss of trust then can actually cause them to have a really hard time discerning who to trust and when to establish an appropriate amount of trust and the appropriate boundaries within themselves and with somebody else. A lot of the time, that discernment gets very murky when you don't have a clear sense of self, when you don't have a clear head or a clear energy in your body because it's bogged down by all this other negative self-talk, this heavy energy, fatigue, whatever other physical manifestations that you have of the trauma. The next one is fear of rejection. So traumatic experiences will very often instill a deep fear of rejection or abandonment or just a sense of like being alone. Whether it's being let down, whether it's nobody looking out for you, whether it's nobody supporting you, it's basically this fear of I'm going to be alone, right? And as a result of this fear, it can cause people to avoid setting boundaries out of concern that if they assert their needs, if they draw a boundary, it will push others away and therefore they'll be rejected. So they're going to go into that fawn response, right? Or the people pleasing, where it's like, I'm going to do whatever I need to do. I'm not going to rock the boat because I want to make sure that everybody likes me. The next one is guilt and shame. So people that have gone through trauma, whether it's big, whether it's small, remember, trauma is everything, right? It's not just, did you see somebody get murdered? It's also, did you lose your mum in the shopping mall when you were 5 years old and you were petrified that you were going to be all alone and on your own and you were fully abandoned, right? That's also trauma as well. It's about how you perceived the incident. That's the main thing. Did your body feel unsafe? So past trauma can cause guilt and shame because the situation that possibly happened they can put it on themselves, right? They project it of like, it's my fault. I did this to myself, or I made this person leave me. Right. And so therefore, especially this is like children of divorce, for example, it's really common with children of divorce. It's like, I made dad leave. So they put all this guilt and this shame on themselves, which can make them feel very undeserving of personal boundaries, or afraid that if they, like I said before, assert their rights and preferences and needs and desires, people are going to say that's too much. You don't deserve that. And so they're afraid, and therefore they refrain from doing it. Hypervigilance is another one. So obviously a really common thing that probably many of us know, thanks to like just fight or flight, is that trauma can trigger a state of hypervigilance. Overthinking is a really common example, especially in girls, for a really common example of hypervigilance from trauma. Basically, you are constantly on guard for potential threats. The heightened state, right, of this hypervigilance, of this alertness, can basically cause you to be overly accommodating and disregard your own personal boundaries to avoid potential conflict with the other person. So, coming back to the idea of being submissive, if you want to be empoweredly submissive, well, if you're afraid of saying no because you don't want the other person to say that, like, oh my God, that's so bad of you, or like, I don't love you anymore, or reject you, or give you the silent treatment for 3 days. If you don't want that, you're going to be hypervigilant. You're going to do every single thing to make the other person happy. You're going to be overly accommodating, and you will get walked all over, and you will be a fucking doormat. And unfortunately, you've done it to yourself, right? Doesn't mean the other person's behavior is excused. We have to also take self-responsibility of, where has my trauma, where are my patterns with my trauma causing me to allow this behavior, causing me to normalize this behavior, and therefore I'm not unattracted to this behavior. So, for example, I got out of a state of hypervigilance. So, as a result of getting out of a state of hypervigilance and not being afraid of saying to people no, or asserting my needs, or, I'm not overly accommodating, right, to my own detriment. What that meant was that I became unattracted to men and people, women as well, that disrespected my needs or were rude to me or whatever it was. I became unattracted to them, and I became attracted to people that respected it. But for a lot of people, they are not unattracted, right? Maybe they're not attracted, because most people aren't going to be attracted to someone being like, you're pathetic, right? Most people aren't going to be attracted to that, but they're not going to see it as a red flag and as something to walk away from, because they've normalized it. They've probably lived with that their whole life. So to them, that's just normal. That's how life is. So hypervigilance is a really good one as well to think about, in that the state of hypervigilance will cause you to feel unempowered in submission. It's not going to allow you to feel empowered in submission, or in letting go of control, or in softening and surrendering to his lead. Another one is disassociation. I've talked about this one previously kind of already before, but I'm just going to quickly say it as well, kind of in this list, so that you guys have this all in one chunk of the podcast. So some people, their trauma response is disassociation, numbing out, right? They basically disconnect themselves from their emotions, their needs, their bodies, their sensations, and it's a coping mechanism to survive. This is the case for a lot of women. The reason why most women will go into disassociation and numbing out is because we inherently know that we aren't as strong as a man, or we aren't as strong as a saber-toothed tiger. We often have kids with us, right? This is especially in the caveman days. We often have kids with us. And so we've learned that it can allow us to survive if we go into numbing out, because of two things. One, the predator will already think we're dead, or two, we won't survive. But if we're numbed out, we won't feel the pain of the tiger eating us alive, or of the, person from the other tribe or whatever it is beating us to death, right? So either you stay alive because the predator thinks that you're already dead, or you don't feel the pain in that process of dying, essentially. I know it sounds very morbid, but this is because we know as a woman, we cannot run fast enough. We cannot fight the saber-toothed tiger. We cannot, fight the predator, whatever it is. Okay. So the disassociation is a coping mechanism to essentially feeling unsafe in your environment. Right now, of course, the disassociation is going to make it really hard for you to even identify what is a yes and what is a no, let alone assert your boundaries. right? So you might already think that you're in a state of fucking submissiveness because you're like, I'm tapped out, Monica. Like, I am numbed the fuck out. I don't even care what's happening around me. That's not submissiveness, right? From an empowered place. That is you being disassociated, because submissiveness is not a trauma response. Submissiveness is a choice, as we kind of dived into earlier on in the episode. So disassociation is obviously going to make it really hard for you to be empoweredly submissive. And it's obviously going to make it really hard for you to assert your boundaries or even know what the fuck your own needs and limits are. The next one is the repeating of a traumatic pattern, right? Or the repetition of a habit or a really toxic cycle that you're in. I don't like the word toxic, but we all know what I mean by it. So we're just going to use it. So the repetition of a traumatic pattern or the repetition of this toxic cycle, basically it's like without awareness and without healing, without the somatic work, without knowing your body, without whatever it is that makes you kind of self-aware, people may unknowingly repeat patterns and trauma in their relationships because, like I was saying before, it's normalized. It's their norm. This is why people get into trauma bonds, right? People get into trauma bonds because that is their normal. It is normal for them to be on the roller coaster of highs and lows. It is normal for them to be chasing after the person that is being mean to them because they are so determined on trying to prove, no, that person loves me. No, I am loved. So an example that I'll use is if you've grown up, for example, with, let's say you've grown up with a father and mother even that abuse drugs. And as a child and as a teenager, all you tried to do was help them and save them. And it didn't work. You weren't able to help them and you weren't able to save them. And you are trying to get out of this pattern of trying to save everybody else, of trying to help everybody else, of basically like disregarding the fact that they're being an asshole to you and actually acknowledging, I deserve more, because you have this deep, deep wound in you of, well, I didn't get to save dad. So hopefully I can save my husband or my partner. And the saving is really, you're hoping that they will stop their bad behavior and choose you. You're hoping that they will prioritize your family or prioritize their health or prioritize the relationship, right? Dad didn't choose you over the drugs. Dad chose the drugs, right? Or mom chose the drugs over you. So now you continue to choose in your life because it's normalized for you. You continue to choose people that choose something else over you. So what it does is, one, that's normal, but two, you're still on a mission of trying to prove to yourself, I can get them to choose me. And it all comes down to the fact that you didn't feel chosen as a child. So you're trying to prove to yourself that you are chosen. And instead of going and being in a relationship with someone that does choose you, that's not a fight. That's not, you've proved it to yourself, right? So it doesn't feel real. It's like, no, that's not real, right? What would feel quote unquote real to you is having to get somebody to choose you that doesn't already choose you, right? So that is kind of an example of the repetition of a traumatic pattern, the trauma bonding, etc. But the repetition of a traumatic pattern, or like these bad habits that can be created, it can be anything. It can be drinking, it can be, emotional eating, it can be using smoking as a way to relax after a long day. It can be that whenever you are having a hard day at work, your default is to like phone your friends and go out and have a late night. It can be anything, right? But it's basically this habit that you're always in that you don't like about yourself. Like you want to change it, but you seem to quote unquote not be able to change it. That's what we're talking about. Obviously, when you're in these bad patterns, you completely disregard your own personal boundaries. You don't even really know what they are. And maybe you know what they are, but you don't actually act on them. And you perpetuate the cycle of the emotional harm. You perpetuate the wounds. You make the wounds bigger and bigger and bigger. If you didn't watch my Instagram live that I did a few weeks ago, if you go on my Instagram, we'll link it below. It's and I actually posted it last week on the podcast as well, so you've got it there to listen to as an audio. But I put a screenshot in of the trauma cycle. So I shared my screen on my phone, but I'm also, as long as everything worked out right, Olivia for me also put that screenshot on the YouTube video for last week's podcast episode. So if you go to the YouTube video as well for last week's podcast episode, you will see, if you scroll forward a little bit, you'll see a little pop-up come up and you'll be able to see that diagram as well of the trauma cycle and how I was talking about it. A really good episode for you to listen to if you are trying to get out of these cycles of bad habits. The last one that I want to mention to you is confusion around boundaries. So when you have past trauma, emotional wounds in you, these energetic blocks, these emotional blocks in you, it can cause you to feel confusion around what is like what's being a bitch versus what drawing a boundary is. The whole thing of like self-respect, self-commitment, like that is like an unknown feeling for you, right? So if you can't differentiate the feeling of caring for others, but then like self-sacrifice, like to your own detriment, then allowing yourself to actually live out a boundary or put a boundary in place or express a boundary and then maybe do whatever else is required after expressing a boundary if it hasn't been honored, that's fucking confusing. That's not really something that you can understand. I have a lot of clients that will come to me and be like, okay, so like this is my boundary, Monica, but I don't get it. Like he said, he like completely disregarded it. So now what? And they're just like, they go into the state of like they're lost. They're like, I don't know what to do now. And I really have to walk them through this. And this is really common. So like it's, if you are in this situation, nothing wrong with you. It is really common to be in this situation because at the end of the day, we're not taught this shit at school, right? We're not really taught how to fully anchor into ourselves, how to fully respect ourselves. Often when it comes to self-love, it's talked in this really light way of like, have a bath, do a face mask, like eat healthy food sometimes, but also like eat a donut. That's self-love. And I'm like, okay, this shit's confusing. That's not self-love, right? Self-love is so much deeper than that. And it's something that is nearly impossible to truly, truly, truly have the feeling of in your body when you have all of this past shit that causes you to feel undeserving, unworthy, confused about yourself, like you need to please everybody else. Like when you have all those things, how the fuck can you be anchored into your own self-respect? You can't be, right? So to kind of sum all of this stuff up, and I will actually say, for those of you that are not joining Queen Alchemy or you can't do one-on-one with me or any of those more high level intimate situations, containers, relationships, they really are a relationship with me. My boundaries masterclass is an incredible place to start. It's $397. It's affordable. It is doable. And if you can't afford that right now, then get resourceful, but also value yourself enough to save $100 a week for a month, and then you'll be able to buy it. Right? Like don't drink coffee for 4 weeks, which would probably do you benefit and you'll probably have the money because I know coffee is very expensive these days when you go to a cafe. I went and got a tea the other day and it was $8 and I was like, what is happening? Anywho, point is the boundaries masterclass is amazing for you to do if you need help in not only knowing your boundaries, like that's easy, you can Google that shit, right? But not just knowing your boundaries, but the step after that. Like what is the step after knowing your boundaries? That's going to be the biggest help for you if you are not doing something more intimate with me. So to wrap up the episode, in order for you to be submissive, to let him take the lead, to soften into your femininity, to let go of your inner control freak, in order for you to actually be in the state that you are desiring to be in as a powerful, feminine, magnetic, delicious woman, you need to have the self-regulation, the deep sense of self-confidence, and the deep ability to, the deep knowing that you have the ability to draw boundaries. But like I've said, if you have these past things, they're going to inhibit you, and you probably already can feel that they are. So I really hope this episode was helpful for you all today in just understanding this. Obviously, this is a lot of the why, right? Explaining a lot. For those of you that want to go to the next step and do the how, and you actually want to implement, you actually want to heal this stuff, you know where to find me, right? So that the next step of the how and actually embodying this and healing and learning and making this your life, I am here. Just send an email to support@monicayateshealth.com. What I love for you guys to do is just share your situation with me. Share what's going on. Share what you're wanting to work on. Share where you would like to be. If you have any programs that you've been looking at that you're feeling called towards, throw that in as well. And then Olivia and I, we talk a lot. So we'll probably have like a joint discussion about it, about your email. We will then advise on what's going to be the best for you. Please don't forget, everybody, the LA pop-up event is happening one time only. Not doing it next year. We're getting married. We are releasing my book. The year after, we are hopefully having babies. So fingers crossed. So this is going to be a one-time event. I'm really excited to do it. We've jammed it into the calendar and I cannot fucking wait. LA's been calling me. So there's something there. Maybe there's something there for you too. It's only a 1 day event. It's on a Saturday. It's doable for everybody. The tickets close very early October. I want to say the 6th off the top of my head. If they're not already sold out before that, there are limited spaces. And for those of you that are running your own business, there is a VIP option. And that VIP option gives you a day with me. So essentially, the day after the event, the Sunday, you get to come hang out with me and my team. And you're not just hanging out with me, but I will be cooking you lunch, and like we'll be hanging out by the pool in bikinis. It'll be a whole vibe. The house is gorgeous. Um, you guys are actually getting time with every single one of my team members, and you're literally going to have them there kind of as your team member for an hour each. So it's going to be a really fun day. Then you'll also have plenty of one-on-one time with me. And the best bit is that the day is directed by you. I'm not just going to be like telling you like run of the mill blase shit that everybody says about their business. I'm really going to be giving you hands-on advice, and you're going to actually walk away with shit done in your business. You can implement straight away. We are going to be doing things on the day. It's going to be very interactive, very immersive, and really fun. And plus, I'm going to cook you food, like, and it's going to be good. So I'm probably going to ask you guys what you want for lunch, to be honest, and I will then cook it for you. There were 4 spaces. One's already been taken at the time of this recording. They all honestly could be gone by now. But there are only 4 ladies that are able to come, which is great because I'm keeping it intimate. So it really does feel like you're getting a lot of one-on-one time with me. And so you get a lot out of the day. So I'm really excited. I'll leave all the details below for you guys, and I will see you in the next episode.